Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today we're going to talk about Andrew Yang, and we're specifically going to talk about charisma, which is an aspect of politics. All right, and we're going to talk about charisma not only for Andrew Yang, right, but we're also going to talk about charisma in perspective to every single other one of his current primary competitors, okay? All right, now why are we going to talk about charisma today? Well, the reason we're going to talk about charisma today is the Lichtman Keys. I really think the Lichtman Keys are incredibly important, okay? Professor Alan Lichtman, he has 13 keys, and we're going to go over them in detail. I think the Lichtman Keys are really important. He has used them specifically to predict 7 or 8 out of the last 8 elections, so depending on how you count and depending on who you ask. He is the most accurate public predictor of U.S. presidential elections in history, and I really feel like the Lichtman Keys are absolutely critical to understanding American politics. And I'm gonna go through his 13 keys. He says that if 6 of these keys are turned against the incumbent loses. Okay. And now what if there isn't a sitting president? Well, whoever essentially, I'm fascinated by the Lichtman Keys. I would read that even if there isn't an incumbent, whatever person is representing the party who was in power last essentially is closest to the incumbent. All right. So let's go through it. First and foremost, now, the 13 keys break down into 4 different groupings. These groupings, the big word at the top, that's my, and I'll say it. So the primary grouping is incumbency. Okay, incumbency is breaks into 5 specific keys. Now these overarching groupings, these are mine. I actually have broken the Lichtman Keys into 4 main power groupings. Right. So the first is incumbency. The first is, are you a sitting president, right? The second is, do you have the party mandate? The second is there a serious contest for the incumbent, right? So, like, for instance, Donald Trump right now, he has no actual competitors. I think he has like 1 or 2 completely forgettable people who I've literally forgotten running against him, but they're not serious competitors. No one would say they are, right? Does the incumbent have charisma, right? Like, that's a really big, important question. Does the incumbent have charisma, right? Like, and that's the primary focus of today's video is charisma. It's really, really important, right? And we're going to come back to charisma in a moment. And then last is scandal. Scandal is one of the 5 keys under the incumbency power bracket for the Lichtman Keys, right? And this is incredible. Like, when you look at Trump, one of the things he's done is he's rewritten the rules for American politics. This started, I think, with Clinton, where the Dems were like, "Does scandal matter?" And then Trump was like, exclamation point, scandal doesn't matter. Here we are, right? I think Clinton started that sentence, and Trump ended it with an exclamation point. And now both the Dems and the Republicans have fully signed off on scandal does not matter for any president. Like, it's amazing we've landed here, but that sure as heck is the case, right? So we have incumbency, right? The next grouping of the Lichtman Keys is stability. All right, let's talk about stability. Stability has 5 keys underneath of it as well. Long-term economy, short-term economy, social unrest. Is there a third party, right? And last, were there any major policy changes, right? The next one is military, okay? Were there any major military successes, or were there any major military failures, right? And then last, here's the kicker, the challenger, right? And now, of course, Andrew Yang is the most important challenger for Donald Trump, right? There's some minor competitors, who are the minor competitors that we need to worry about other than Andrew Yang? Oh, I think Warren's running, right? Biden's in the mix, Sanders is in there. Who else we got? Klobuchar. There's a few others. Buttigieg, Steyer. Still a couple of people sticking around that we need to take care of and, kind of wipe off the board, politically. We'll get there, right? But here we have these, so these are all the Lichtman keys, right? So, but you can see right here under Challenger and you can see under Incumbency, charisma is a key under both, right? And so Lichtman is saying charisma matters. It matters for the challenger and it matters for the incumbent, right? And I totally agree with him. It is incredibly important. So today we are going to look at charisma in detail for Andrew Yang, right? And we're going to look at it for every single one of his competitors, right? So we're going to look at charisma for Yang, and we're going to look at for every single one of his competitors, right? Now, what exactly are we talking about when we talk about charisma, right? Well, let's look at it, right? Okay, so charisma. So from this point forward, right? First of all, I'm a human being, so I have a level of charisma myself, and I understand what charisma is. But a large portion of my mapping of my charisma comes from Dungeons and Dragons. I've played Dungeons and Dragons since I was 12 years old, so that means I've played for 37 years, and I have a big understanding of how people interact from Dungeons and Dragons, specifically through charisma. Charisma is one of the 6 attributes. There's 3 physical attributes. There's strength, dexterity, and constitution in Dungeons and Dragons, and there's 3 mental attributes. There's wisdom, intelligence, and charisma, and in Dungeons & Dragons, as you play Dungeons & Dragons, you learn that charisma essentially has these different components. It has presentation, how you present yourself. Are you clean? Like, do you shower? And, what kind of fashions do you wear? Is your hair well combed? That kind of thing. That's presentation. There's presence. What kind of presence do you put into the world, right? That's essentially, it's part of charisma. And how do you communicate? What is your communication like, right? So what is your communication like? And these 3 aspects are all part of charisma. And this maps completely to the real world as well. Presentation, presence, and communication. And trust and believe, every single one of Andrew Yang and all his major competitors are very much right now dealing with charisma. Like, they are projecting charisma into the world. Now, what's interesting is I think presence is incredibly important in American politics. Communication is incredibly important in American politics. Presentation is virtually irrelevant in American politics. Here's why: you have to be clean. You have to make sure you take a shower every day. You have to be clean. You have to get a haircut, right? You got to brush your teeth. Blah blah blah, right? But the reality is, like, things like fashion and hair and, like, grooming and things like this, especially fashion, right? It is so irrelevant in American politics. It's stunning. I can't believe how incredibly dull the clothes. It is like a uniform for all these politicians, and they dress so boringly, and their hair is so boring, and, like, their presentation is so shockingly boring. Like, I hate to say it, even Andrew Yang. Like, it's so bad. Like, it's so bad. I'm a sneakerhead, and I have not seen a single pair of Nike, white concretes yet. Like, it's ridiculous. Could somebody just wear something of interest? But, like, in America, you could just flip, presentation upside down. Like, it's just done. It's really not part, and it's kind of strange. I think it's really kind of strange. All right, so going forward, we're going to talk about Andrew Yang, and we're going to talk about charisma, right, for every single one of his competitors. But we're also going to talk about levels of charisma. In Dungeons & Dragons, levels of charisma come from 0. They come from a score of 1 to 20. All right. Now, scores 1 through 9 really don't exist for player characters, right? Like, they're for, like, non-player characters and, like, essentially, like, stable hands and things like that. So player characters score from 10. They have scores of 10. And if you have a score of 10, whenever you do a charisma roll, you get a +0. If you have a 12 in your charisma, you get a +1 every time you roll a d20 to do anything using your charisma. If you have a charisma of 14, you get a +2. 16 is a very high charisma. It's very impressive, right? 18 is the human maximum for charisma in Dungeons and Dragons. And 20 is incredibly rare, and you only see it with like a magic item, right? So I'm going to rank Andrew Yang, and I'm going to rank every single one of his competitors. And, you know, just for a little bit of drama, we'll rank Andrew Yang last, right? So let's go ahead and rank every single one of these competitors, and we'll talk about their charisma scores and what their charisma looks like in this current election, right? All right, Tom Steyer. Big old 10, plus 0 on every roll. One of the most uncharismatic people in the race right now. Very generic charisma. I really feel like his communication and his presence is incredibly generic. He really, you kind of have to like, you have to go get some coffee every time he starts talking. He really doesn't, you know, he does not have he really doesn't, he expects you to listen to him because he's talking, not because he is drawing you in with any type of, you know, with anything that anybody who knows what charisma is would use to draw you in, right? So big old 10-0. I really think Tom Steyer he is just not a charismatic person. He really is just not that great from that perspective. Who is next? Let's talk about let's talk specifically about Amy Klobuchar. Actually, I really like Amy Klobuchar a lot. I think she's a great candidate. I actually think she is quite charismatic. I think she's one of the most charismatic people on the entire race right now. I'd actually say she has a 16 charisma. And one of the reasons why is I think it's that Heartland stalwart part. She's so unique, and she really stands out from the crowd. And she's so different, right? Because Coastal Elite charisma is really kind of played out. We've seen so much of it. It all looks the same, and we're seeing it, from virtually every candidate. So I really like Amy Klobuchar a lot. I think she's really unique, and I think she has a really unique style of communication, and I think she has a really unique style of she has a strong presence as well. Very, very interesting candidate. Whoa, Pete Buttigieg, right? I am very tempted to hit Pete with a big old 10.0, but I think he's got a little bit of charisma. It's shock. I think it's really It seems to me that Pete tries to be uncharismatic. I'm really surprised at how uncharismatic Pete is. Again, there's things you can do to be charismatic. And by the way, I will talk a little bit more when we get to some of the more charismatic people about what you do to be charismatic. And Pete does virtually none of these, right? And there are people who are like, hey, I'm a smart person. You should listen to me because I'm smart, or you should listen to me because, there are people who are like, I'm me. You should listen to me because I'm me. There are people who believe they don't need to work for your attention, right? And which is, and I think Pete's one of those people, without a doubt. There's no question. So I would put him at a 12, right? So that's Pete and his charisma. All right, let's keep moving here. And that's kind of the second tier debate style candidates, right? Debate tier candidates right now. Let's talk about Bernie Sanders. Oh my gosh. Yeah, Bernie Sanders is very... I can't put him at a Tom Steyer's 10-0 level, right? He's got a little bit of charisma, but not much. He is very low. And here's the issue. I think Sanders absolutely has the ability to be charismatic, and he's choosing not to. Clearly, Bernie Sanders is putting a ton of time and energy into being a curmudgeon. I think his picture is in the dictionary next to curmudgeon. He is frustrated, and generally, he just grouchy, and he projects it. Like, he wears it like a uniform. Like, it's so clear. And it really, really reduces his charisma a lot. Right. And again, he's projecting like the world's broken, and like not a little bit, but like super broken. Right. And he's one of these people who just really feel, and a lot of these candidates are like, I don't need charisma. Right. And Sanders is absolutely one of them. Just really kind of, putting this vibe out in the world. Like, I don't need to be charismatic. All right. Now we're going to start to get into some of the more charismatic characters here. So, yeah, let's talk about this one right now, Biden, right? Oh boy, here we go. All right. Biden is a big old 16, right? He is. You know what? I gotta be very, very honest. I'm bumping him up. Biden has got a big old 18. He does a ton. So what does Biden do to be charismatic? Well, I hate to say this. Man, I don't like saying this. He's got a smile and he uses it, man. He flashes those pearly whites as much as he can, and it's powerful. Like, I have daughters who were in dancing, and they had a dance teacher who taught them every time you get on stage, you flash that smile. And now every time I see dancers, it's odd to me to see people who are dancing who aren't smiling, right? And and like Biden, like it's like he's at work, I'm smiling, and a smile is a powerful thing. It's hard to keep it on your face, and Biden just keeps it there. He is an easy talker most of the time. Sometimes he'll lose a word or two, but and he does a lot to pull you into stories. He takes the risk of stories. Stories have risks, right? And he's like, let me tell you a story. Let me tell you a narrative. Let me tell you a yarn from my days. Let me bring you in. And he takes the risks of telling stories, and that's powerful. And there's risk there. And Biden has a ton of charisma. He has a ton of charisma. And he's a glad hander. Like, he's just a really charismatic guy. And I think it's one of the reasons why he's so high in the polls. And I think he's one of the reasons why he has been really taking it to Bernie in a lot of polls. Now, Bernie's absolutely a major contender here. But Biden is a major competitor, and it is the power of his charisma. And Lichtman is saying, hey, charisma is incredibly important. Pay attention, right? And I think he's right. It's one of the secret sauces for Biden, right? Let's talk about Warren, right? Warren is really interesting. I think that Warren is kind of a naturally uncharismatic person. However, she's crazy, crazy smart, right? And I think she's smart enough to know you had better be charismatic, and she is. I think she read some books. People talk to her, and she listens. Warren comes in at a 14 +2, right? She and so she really is she has made herself charismatic, in my opinion. And again, she's willing to tell those stories. She's willing to bring you into her life, right? She also, I feel like, she's willing to emote, right? She's willing to show emotion. So I don't think I think naturally she's a head down, very businesslike person, but I think she understands the need for charisma and has put on the cloak of charisma because it's needed. And you know what? I'll take the effort. I'll give her the points, right? And I think she has become a charismatic person. And I'm totally okay with that. Like, I think, that's okay. If you're not a natural person and you strive and you become a thing, I'll give you the points for the effort. And I think Warren has made herself, has really made herself that way, right? Now, let's talk about Andrew Yang, all right? So where does Andrew Yang fall, right? So Andrew Yang, I believe, is he is the most charismatic. Actually, you know what? He is an 18 +4. He has the same level of charisma as Biden, right? I wish I could say he was higher. He's not. He has the same level of charisma as Biden. And I think that's important to understand that, right? I think he's smarter than Biden, with no question, right? But he has the same level of charisma as Biden. And I really think they're both 18s, they're both +4s. And I think it's important to acknowledge that. And I think it's one of the reasons why we should really choose him as the Democrat choice, right? I do want to take one moment and say that the Democrats have had 120. They've had 1 +5 charisma person in the history of the game, and that was Obama. In the face of what we're looking at right now, having just walked out of debate number 7, where the J.J. Abrams lens flare was so bright, just looking at Obama and what he accomplished, how powerful he was, what an amazing, amazing president he was, and what an amazing person he was. He's the only charisma 20, the only +5 charisma person the Democrats have ever had. And he truly is amazing. And walking through this current election really has given me a broader, more powerful appreciation of Obama. And I do miss him. It gives me absolutely no desire to vote for Biden for sure. I absolutely really feel that, based on charisma, Andrew Yang is absolutely the best choice. And the reason why is he's got the same charisma as Biden, and he's got a ton more awesome attributes like an actual genuine desire to have the job. Biden does not have that. And an amazing intelligence and an awesome and wonderful nobility. I think, Andrew Yang is our pick. That is a look into the Lichtman Keys, specifically the key of challenger charisma. Thanks for going through this with me today. Please consider liking and subscribing, and have a wonderful millennium.